Greetings everybody, welcome to another live at the Waterhole with my Wild Earth in association with African. And we've started out at African's Coral Dislodge with, unexpectedly, some more elephants enjoying some water during the heat of the day. It's another fairly potently warm day here in the Lowveld. Temperatures in the mid-30s, quite warm for winter. Even last night it didn't drop down much, about 15 last night. So we're enjoying some lovely weather at the moment, clear skies. My name's Ben Coley and I will be with you for the next 2 hours as we embark on another trip around all of our different camp locations. And as always, it's live, it's interactive, and we would very much value your questions, comments, feedback, anything you want to know about whatever it is we're watching or anything wildlife based at all. And I will always do what I sending them. It's great to hear from you. Gives us a good idea of the diversity of our audience and all of you wonderful people who make this possible and with whom we can share these incredible images of Africa's iconic wildlife. Of course, we had a good World Lion Day yesterday, and it seems like today has started out as World Elephant Day. Well, it's been Elephant Day today, but there again, every day is an Elephant Day, it seems, of late. Quite a few of them clustered around. Oh, there's a nice little group of them clustered around the lodge there. As usual, most of the more experienced elephants obviously choosing to take the water from the inflow pipe that is keeping that dam well stocked with water this dry season. You can see just how dry the grass is. A lot of these animals under water stress at the moment to find regular drinking spots and a sufficient amount of food, including this one giraffe who took a little bit of a stumble there. Shame. He's going to come and try his luck in and amongst all these elephants, hoping they are distracted with what they are doing and can skim for a little drink on the other side of the dam. Will no doubt take his time, just make sure that the coast is clear, nice and open there around this dam, so it should keep the herbivores fairly comfortable that they're not being snuck up upon. Just having a quick check. Or forming a little bit of giraffe yoga to head far enough down to enjoy some of the water. Elephants have it far more easily, of course. Just wrapping that trunk around the pipe, sucking up water, and carry quite a few litres of water in there and then putting it out like a great big straw. Yeah, good afternoon, Catherine. I'm glad you're looking forward to another couple of hours of waterhole fun. And yeah, let's hope for a pool party or two from all of the elephants and anything else that decides to come down. How cool would it be to have an antelope pool party in somewhere where there are no crocodiles, of course? Afternoon, K9 Girl. Nice to hear from you as well. Yep, or interesting sightings. As you said, it is a pretty much a scorching winter's day here, so we should have lots of activity around the waterhole. Things aren't drinking though; they will probably be tucked up in the shade somewhere, waiting for the cooler afternoon hours, the early evening. Have you got gale force winds at the beach? Oh, I'm sorry about that, but you better hunker down and stay out of it. But enjoy the beach regardless. Now, there's some serious expanse of water. And Ari, greetings from the. Always nice to hear from our overseas listeners and viewers. It never ceases to amaze me the diversity of people who watch these shows, and no doubt get such great enjoyment from these amazing images. Animals' lives go on, and we are very, very fortunate and privileged to be a part and to give you guys the opportunity to also see it all happening in a live manner. Good afternoon, Angela, as well. You want to know whether giraffes have a specific sort of birthing time? Well, as a rule, as with most herbivores, giraffes will give birth in conjunction with the rainy seasons, wherever that may be that they are. So for us here in the Lowveld, we would normally expect to see giraffes or baby giraffes present during the summer months where there is more rain, there's more food for them, more cover. Remember when giraffes do give birth for the first week or two, the little one will stay tucked away in the undergrowth or in the long grass somewhere, and mum will go off and feed, not too far away, but she'll come back regularly to suckle. So very important there is a sufficient shelter, water, although of course giraffes do have very, very um, economical digestive systems that are able to extract an awful lot of moisture from what they're eating. But this time of year, even having that ability does make it difficult. And as we can see now, they'll always take the opportunity to drink. And so, as with all animals, if you are suckling youngsters, you have to produce milk, and that means that you need sufficient amount of food for the metabolic energy to create that milk. So we would normally expect to see a spike in baby giraffes during the summer months when the rains are more common. But they are indeed, as you say, Angela, beautiful animals. And you're asking if they are endangered. Well, giraffes as a species, according to the IUCN Red List, are listed as vulnerable. Of course, there are different subspecies of giraffe, some of which are of least concern, some of which are critically endangered. So it very much depends on the area. And as usual, it's mostly due to habitat loss and fragmentation of those populations, which can lead to genetic bottlenecks and generally just not having a sufficient amount of space. But say, unfortunately, many animals are endangered these days, and as with World Day yesterday, there are many initiatives to try and raise awareness for all of these animals, and of course, they're all interconnected. Predator numbers control herbivore numbers. They, of course, are dictated by vegetation, by geology, by climate. Everything in nature, every system is a complex matrix, a lattice work of all these different factors that are very, very important to all work together in unity to allow nature to find the balance and allow for such a wonderful diversity of species that we are privileged to view here. So it's something that we've learned ecological perspective over the last sort of probably 30 to 50 years in a lot more detail that it's everything is connected. You can't change one thing without expecting there to be a knock-on effect of other things. So that becomes the understanding of behaviors and understanding of these relationships is vitally important from an ecological perspective to help try and keep these ecosystems as well balanced as possible so that all of these animals can proliferate. Just checking some facts and figures here. In terms of global population of giraffe in general, we're looking at somewhere between 100 to 120,000, which is a decent population. But again, if you compare that to the number of people on the planet, it's very, very few. So we must still very much respect their needs and enjoy them and do our best to look after all of them. Penelope Kenyon, I'm glad that you think that Ngoro camera here is one of your favourites, as well as Tembe Elephant Park and all the associated elephants that we see. But so we're so lucky to have such a diversity of cameras that we can dip into. So our great team down in Johannesburg, I've got Tulu in my ear today, and they'll be monitoring all the different feeds from all the different cameras. And if anything interesting was to pop up, we will definitely go and visit those other areas. So we've got cameras, if you haven't joined us before, we've got lots of different cameras in South Africa itself, various ones dotted with the Greater Kruger National Park in the northeast. We've got cameras down in the Eastern Cape, in the KwaZulu-Natal area, further northwest up towards Madikwe. We've got cameras around Etosha National Park. We've got a couple up in Zimbabwe, and of course the very lucrative El Donyo camera up in Kenya, where I'm sure we will be visiting at some point as well. Normally a real epicenter of activity, but it seems Nkoro is a fan favorite today, particularly amongst the aides. I have to admit, also doing a little bit of reading just in the background here about the giraffes. There's been a lot of genetic changes or taxonomical changes due to genetic studies on giraffe over the last few years as we get better and better ways of genetic testing. The classification among species is changing, and as I understand it, at least, there are currently species of giraffe, or four distinct species of giraffe, some of which are divided into subspecies. So you've got the Maasai giraffe, the northern giraffe, the reticulated giraffe, and the southern giraffe. So we have some subspecies mixed in amongst those, but those are now the four major species. The ones we see of Borneo are the Maasai giraffe, and down here In the Lowveld and in South Africa, we get the southern giraffe, as it's known, the tallest of all of them. Have been recorded at over 6 meters, but really is such a beautiful animal. It's always people's favorite on safari, particularly amongst our female travelers. It's usually right up there at the top of the list with animals that they want to see. And why would it not be? It is just such an elegant and graceful and unusual creature. It really is. I mean, I always say there's nothing like a giraffe. Closest relative is the okapi in Central Africa, but no chances of ever seeing one of those down here. For much more forested equatorial regions. It also has a slightly elongated neck, and then of course there's Gerenuk, which isn't related at all, but that sort of impala that has looks as if it's been racked and got a stretched neck that is in East Africa. But nothing in the world like a giraffe. In a sense, this big female elephant cow here has sort of been pushed out the way by all the youngsters, learning from the adults of where to get the nice, freshest water. Hopefully, we'll see some of these youngsters go in and have a bit of a dip and a roll around in the water. Always such fun when that happens, and we've been very lucky over the last few days. We've seen some of that, particularly on, what does it say, Sunday. So on Friday, we had lots of pool parties and youngsters pushing and shoving and rolling around, sort of making mud angels and things in the water. It was great. It was interesting. You've got all that water, and then you've got this great big scrum of elephants all fighting over. You can see the lodge in the background there. What the greeting this will be. Some people just living at the lodge, looking out onto these vast open plains, nice and clear, very good visibility about around Nkoro. I have been lucky enough to visit Nkoro, and so what a nice way to start your visit with a herd of elephants coming to quench their thirst. Oh, did that little one trip? I think he had a little tumble. Sorry, boy. Hope you're okay. Oh, another one had a little tumble. Shame. These elephants are a bit uncoordinated this morning. Careful, little one. So Mum will keep a careful eye on this young one and help him out with a trunk who gets into trouble. There we go. Interesting to see if she clears a path so the little one can get through to the clean water. What a good mum doing her protective duties. That is a lovely tiny little elephant there, probably no older than 6 months. Lots of growing to do. I can't see if it's a little boy or a little girl yet. Oh, Penelope Kenyon, you might be getting your wish. We're having a you here at, but we're going to go to your other favourite cam now, which is down in Texas. Let's see if we've got some more down there. Indeed, we do. Looks like all the boys coming down for a drink. So we had some lovely interactions a couple of days with young playing in the water, taking advantage of this beautiful waterhole. Very, very picturesque, this area of Tembe. And this big ball that we've seen a few times before with those rather magnificent tusks, arc, beautiful shape to them. Very, very sharp as well. Very good condition, no breakages there. It's a warm day. You can see the rhythmical flapping of those ears. Of course, the ears also used in terms of body language. An angry elephant will spread its ears out and try and make itself look big and intimidating, but often interpreted incorrectly by sort of safari goers. If they see an elephant flapping its ears, they may think that that elephant is being aggressive, towards them. But generally, it is the cooling mechanism. It's a very, 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 very thin skin. You can see it's almost like leaves of paper flapping around there in comparison to the very thick skin on the rest of the body. And if we have a chance to have a good zoom in, oh, there was one on the floor. I didn't even see you down there. You'll see all of the veins and the on the back of the ears constantly. Ears, it just creates nice airflow, cools down the blood in that ear or in those ears, and then spreads it around the rest of the body. A wonderful way of keeping cool in hot temperatures. Yeah, that one was having a good roll around in the dust. Didn't even see him. Big slice out of his ear, that one. Interesting to watch if this big bull on the left having a drink. If he starts splashing himself with water, you'll see that a lot of the water that is splashed onto him will go belly and up behind the ears, all designed to help with thermoregulation. And of course, you've all seen that sort of wrinkle that elephants have got with those big sort of rills, those valleys of skin in between the ridges. They are so designed, we think, in order to stay a little bit moister for long, just creating their own shadow, basically. And even on a microscopic level, the elephant looks like that under a microscope as well. So we see the obvious sort of wrinkles within the skin, but the skin structure itself is also wrinkled, just creating all of these little areas, increase the surface area to which water can penetrate, stay cooler for longer, all designed to keep that large grey blob cool in this sort of baking sun. But it does help when you've got very thick skin to insulate your body. And as mentioned before, it's actually a good thing to have a large body size where it's hot because your ratio of surface area to volume is much less or greater, depending on which way you look at it. It takes a lot to warm up something big than it does to warm up something small. If you think if you had a cube of water that was, say, 1 centimeter cubed and another one that was 1 meter cubed, and you filled them with the same temperature water, put them out in the hot sun, the 1 centimeter squared cube will heat up a lot quicker than the 1 meter squared cube because the surface area to volume ratio is very, very different. The bulk you've got, the longer it takes to the better control that you have got over your body temperature. There are various other adaptations that animals have. The ability to pant, for example. Many animals can sweat in order to create evaporative cooling. But if you do sweat, then you need to make sure that you can replenish that moisture loss. So elephants in must, that reproductive state that male elephants go into. One of the signs of that is urine constantly dripping from the penile sheath. It has a very, very acrid smell. I was down in Shamwari a few days ago and we bumped into a bull in full must, and so this urine cascading from his sheath, and he absolutely stank. All those hormones being released into the air. But a musting bull elephant will need to drink a bit more regularly because he'll lose tens of liters of fluid doing that. So one of the ways that many antelope and other animals have also adapted is that ability to raise their internal body heat. So good examples are the gemsbok, the oryx, the eland. Wild dogs can also do it. Have been shown to physiologists do it. If you can raise your internal body temperature higher than that of this area, then you won't sweat so much. And that's a good way to conserve water during the drier times. the ability to concentrate one's urine also important because you don't want to constantly be urinating, getting rid of all that moisture that you work so hard to conserve. So things off, the ilan block again, very concentrated urine, so not much water loss. Be nice if we got some interaction here. Beautiful bull coming into shot, and everybody quite happy for just enjoying the water. Often you'll get the young bulls, teenagers, like the one in the middle there. They'll often have a bit of a push and a shove, especially around water, because they can afford to be a little bit more boisterous, work up a little bit internal temperature, because they can quickly replenish it. The word for this one, but saying that the three largest tuskers in South Africa are Tembi, but one of them passed away about 10 years ago. So there really are some magnificent animals there. I've seen a few in the Kruger, particularly up in the northern part, really there aren't as many as used to be. Again, thanks to human and wildlife interactions and conflicts. Of course, the hunting many years ago when many of those big tuskers were hunted out, and the six now just really being passed on because there are few of them around. I will say, if we were to eradicate all the people over six, it wouldn't take very many generations for the human race as to be much shorter than they are now. for a little bit of interaction. So it's always fun to watch them. These two bulls, very equally sized, but generally speaking, you wouldn't expect to see any aggression between them. I don't see evidence of either of them being in that musket. But big elephants, big mature elephants like this, they can spend almost half the year potentially in must at certain times. Obviously, a lot of it is stimulated by smelling of the hormones within the coming from the females. So whenever a female is coming into estrus, she will urinate. When she defecates, the hormones associated with estrus will be released into the air, and elephants have such a sensitive sense of smell that will also stimulate their hormones to change and to alter, and potentially cause the elephant to go into must. But those bigger, older elephants can spend a lot of the year in must. Nice to see. This one's obviously had a bit of a dip, cooled off completely. So an awful lot of stuff going on in elephants that we are not privy to from just our initial senses watching them. We were discussing, I forget now if it was yesterday or the day before, about the way that recent research has shown elephants' ability to communicate with individuals amongst the herds, that when they actually do pass on these sonic messages that we can't hear, that it was done up in Amboseli, I think it was, but they were able to show that individual elephants would respond to individual rumbles, obviously directed to them, pretty much sort of using the name of an individual. Other individuals would ignore those messages, and certain individuals would respond. And when a female is in estrus, she knows she's only got a limited amount of time to find a mate, and a good quality mate at that. She wants the best genetics for her offspring. So females will give off what we call a musk rumble or an estrus rumble, something again that we can't hear. It's too low frequency for our ears to pick up, but other male elephants in the area will hear that, and they will head towards the source of that sound in order to hopefully get breeding rights. And then male elephants will bump into other male elephants, and pecking orders will be established. And ultimately, as far as the female is concerned, only the best suitor will be the one that sort of finally tracks her down, giving her offspring the best chance to have the best genetics to go on and lead a strong, healthy life and pass on those genetics to the following generations. Cabello, how aggressive can a bull elephant and must be? Well, how long is a piece of string? It's just like people. Some people are naturally aggressive, other people are naturally a little bit more passive. Just because an elephant bull is in must, it doesn't mean that he will definitely be more aggressive. He'll be a little bit bolder and a bit more confident. But just because you see or come across an elephant bull in must, it doesn't mean he's going to try and stomp you to oblivion. You just have to be a little bit more wary. I think the best way to describe it is they have a shorter temper than normal. They often sort of showing off a little bit, and certainly one needs to exercise caution. But they can be incredibly, well, I suppose what we would consider aggressive or destructive. They have such power that it's very difficult to sort of comprehend and put into words if they wish to. But I've had multiple encounters with musk bull elephants, whereby the elephant's been completely placid. But it is very, very good advice to just be very wary of a musting bull elephant, and they can change their demeanor quite quickly, can be a little bit more unpredictable. What I would say is if you're on foot and you get wind of, more often than not, it'll be through smell of a musting bull elephant. That is a time to be a little bit more wary. Again, you might be okay, but you have a lot smaller safety net on foot. So that smell, it's a very acrid smell of a musting bull elephant. It's very difficult to describe, but it's once you've smelt it, you'll never unsmell it. You'll never forget it. It's very, very distinctive, almost sort of an acidic fruitiness. It's very, I don't know how you, but we unfortunately don't have a language that does very well in describing smells because we generally look at things. Our eyesight is our normal dominant sense, but animals are very, very attuned to smell, as are we. Just don't utilize it as a form of communication very regularly, so we have a very limited vocabulary for it. But yeah, if you do get a whiff of a musting bull elephant on foot, take very good heed of the wind. Generally, a good idea to walk in the opposite direction from where that smell is emanating from. Another thing you can also see is just, because if you're walking from the wrong side of the wind, you may not smell a musting bull elephant. But if you see acts of a big bull, one in full must, you will actually see sort of drips along the path that the elephant is walking from. That's being produced all the time. So that's another good sign you can look out for. You can actually get down on your hands and knees and smell the ground there. And even if you can't smell it in the air, you'll get that residual scent of that must smell from those drips on the. Joy in Hong Kong. You're asking about the Perseid meteor shower. Yes, we should probably mention that. It does sort of peak over the next 2 or 3 nights. Um, we did see a few shooting stars last night. In fact, we've seen quite a few over the past sort of week or so in the build up to that meteor shower, but you never quite know what you're going to get. Some years you get good showers and other years not so good showers. It very much depends on strike those objects. So a meteor shower is ultimately caused because as the Earth goes to the sun, it will pass through the trajectory of a comet, for example, which is a big sort of icy ball of frozen dust and gas that lives or started out life way out in the outer solar system beyond Neptune. Something then bumps it, causes that object's orbit to change, and it moves into a different orbit that takes it very, very close to the sun and then moves way further away. Some of these orbits can take tens of thousands of years, but the closer ones that repeat regularly as they get closer to the sun, the heat of the sun causes that ice to melt and they leave this dust trail behind them. And once a year, the Earth's trajectory takes it through that dust tail. And so I always describe it, it's a bit like driving down the highway and driving into a swarm of flies and they all explode on your windscreen. That's exactly what's happening with the meteor shower. The Earth is moving in its orbit around the sun and once a year comes into contact with this sort of debris trail from a comet, and all that stuff then impacts with our atmosphere, and we see these shooting stars or meteors in the sky. Unfortunately for us in the southern hemisphere, it's not the best shower because the what we call the radiant, the point of origin of a lot of those shooting stars are not really visible during the nighttime here. It's best viewed in the southern hemisphere in the early morning, but your best views of this particular shower, which is generally considered to be the best of the year, will be in the northern hemisphere as opposed to the southern. But I will certainly be out over the next couple of nights hoping for some good ones. They're normally quite sort of quick and fast streaks of light, just because it's mostly sort of frozen particles that don't create a lot of friction and energy when they hit our atmosphere. They burn up very, very quickly. If you get a really good display, we can get a few hundred in the course of an hour, or up to sort of 90 to 100 shooting stars per hour. So a great opportunity to go out for some long exposure photography. Fortunately, at the moment, we're sort of coming up to half moon, so the sky is a little bit more lit up than perhaps it would be at other times of the month. That will obviously have an effect as to how many shooting stars we're able to see. We'll miss some of the fainter ones, but it should be a good show. So Northern Hemisphere folk definitely get out there over the next couple of nights and hopefully you're lucky. Look towards the constellation of Perseus, hence the name Perseids, and hopefully you'll see lots and lots of streaks in the night sky, which a cool way to think about it is that is the origins of the solar system. It's the building blocks of the planets. It's leftover material from the sun when the planets were created, colliding with our atmosphere. P-Sol, you say you're a rock and star person. I think that's a very good skill set to have or interest to have, definitely. And the two are intrinsically linked, of course. Rocks are made out of elements and minerals, most of which were formed in the heart of stars that over millions and millions of years have created these new elements. And when they die, they spray those elements back into the interstellar medium, into space. They merge with other clouds of dust and gas, which will spawn the next generation of stars and planets. So everything that you see about around you, from this element to your laptop, to your table, your chair, your knife, your fork, the tree outside, were all formed. The building blocks that make up every single thing that we know of were all formed in the heart of dying stars. But an amazing thing to try and wrap your head around. Catherine, you're going to try your luck. But it looks like it's going to be partly cloudy. Well, unfortunately, nature does have a sixth sense of humor. You can almost guarantee that if there's a really important thing happening up in the sky, it's generally cloudy. It's like when there's a really strong solar storm and there might be aurora possibilities, it's normally cloudy. It's often cloudy over meteor shower dates. It's just nature's sixth sense of humor. It's like when you buy a new telescope or some new telescopic equipment, you can pretty much guarantee it will be cloudy for the next few weeks. And your excitement to procure some new equipment has ruined it for everybody. But that's just Murphy's Law, unfortunately. Okay, and you're asking about human beings. So I'm assuming you're still referring to sort of the origin of all these elements. But yeah, absolutely. We are, like everything else, is made up of elements like carbon. We're carbon-based life forms. Well, if carbon could just be created, we'd just be making it and making stuff. It's the same with gold and silver. There's a reason that there's not much of it, and it drives such a high. It's a lot of work and mechanisms and potentially millions and millions of years of God creating those elements. So Carl Sagan, the old 1970s astronomer in the US, he used to talk about this. You may have heard the phrase, we're all made of star stuff. And it is a very likely possibility that the atoms that make up your left hand came from a different star, the atoms that made up your right hand, and multiple stars that went through their lives, forged these elements within that high pressure environment of their core, fusing hydrogen into helium and helium into carbon and carbon into oxygen, into silicon, into magnesium, all these other elements. And then, but you can only go so far in the heart of a star, or even a big star. Once you get to iron, things start to stall. But in that moment of a supernova explosion or another catastrophic event up in space, like neutron stars colliding, black holes colliding, the sheer amount of energy that is created in that split second is enough to forge all those what we would call heavier elements in terms of the periodic table, the golds, the silvers, the platinums, etc., etc. So as you said, Kim, yeah, amazing to think how interconnected everything is. It's very difficult to wrap your head around because we have to think on such a ridiculously large scale compared to what we would normally do. Um, but that's why I enjoy astronomy, particularly as part of a guided experience. So it's all about interconnectivity and how things are linked together. And you could argue that, say, everything that we know, we have to thank for those millions and billions of year cycles of the stars above our heads every night. Peace all, yes. Again, old Carl Sagan, he did. I keep calling it old Carl Sagan. I don't want that to be disrespectful, but a very, very famous in from an astronomical circles and did such a great job of bringing this knowledge to public. Of course, we have other people at the moment who are doing the same thing. The Brian Coxes, the Neil deGrasse Tysons of the world, doing a wonderful job in making this information available in an understandable manner. I think old again. I was going to do it again. Old Carl Sagan. Carl Sagan has my favorite quote in all of astronomy, and because people often ask me, do I believe in life on other planets and what are the opportunities for life to have developed elsewhere? I leave that entirely up to you guys. But when Carl Sagan was asked the same question, he replied with a beautiful, succinct quote that I use very regularly in my evenings, which was, well, the universe is a pretty big place, so if it is just us, it's an awful waste of space. And I've always enjoyed that. That sort of puts it into perspective, and a nice pun to enjoy a good pun. But Elijah, you're right. It does make it a little bit insignificant, almost uncomfortably so at times when you try and wrap your head around the enormity that is just our immediate neighborhood in the galaxy or the universe as a whole. I mean, from us to a star, 40 trillion kilometers or a 5 million year journey by commercial aeroplane. And that's to get to our close neighbor. Our objects just aren't programmed to understand things on that scale, temperatures, sizes, distances. We hear the words, but I always say to guides when we're discussing it, you've got to find a way to make it relate to somebody, try and wrap their heads around the sheer ridiculousness of it all. Well, that's a good astronomical rant. Thanks for all the and comments, everybody. But you should probably know me by now. There's guaranteed to be one or two of those over the course of a live at the waterhole session. Even the elephants have turned their back on me now. It's all too much for them. I'm going to go stand in the shade. Throwing star onto their back. Interesting fact for you. Speaking of throwing star stuff, as we were talking about the Perseid meteor shower, it is generally considered that a year about 50,000 tons of space dust drifts onto the surface of the Earth from shooting stars that burn up in our atmosphere. They disintegrate, broken down into tiny, tiny little parts, of which will be locked up in the winds and the jet streams for many years to come, but a lot of it slowly drifts down and lands on Earth. So as opposed to actual meteorites, this is literally sort of space dust. So imagine that 50,000 tons of space dust landing on the Earth every year. Quinn, how did I get into astronomy? Well, I think the easiest description is I never grew up. I always say, what doesn't enjoy space and the stars and the idea stuff's out there. I just never grew out of that. I just find it all fascinating, things from different perspectives. I enjoy a good cryptic crossword. I like avoiding the norm where possible, and I just think I would describe it as really good exercise for the brain. It's a place where you can wonder, and a place where you can imagine, and the possibilities of what might be out there, and the mechanisms are going on up there. Added to the fact that it's just really peaceful, and there's something very special just about sitting under the sky and absorbing it. That humans have been doing since they were humans. The sky is so important. After all, today is Sunday, named after the sun. Yesterday was Saturn's day, that we've shortened to Saturday. There's so many astronomical influence in today's world that we don't realize because I think that April, the stars were a massive part of their life. It helped them predict weather conditions. It helped them with predicting animal movements, when to plant, when to harvest crops. The concept of time all comes from observations of the night sky. Okay, well, I think we head up to Oldonio, India, and see what's afoot at the waterhole there. And a big group of zebra. I think we did have a good chance after all that astronomical ranting. Let's just enjoy these zebras. Yeah, what a beautiful scene this is up at Oldonio. The zebra's enjoying a quick drink here. Again, still no elephants, but strange. Any elephants here for the last couple of days. Unusual for Oldonio, but great for the other animals that don't have to worry about getting trampled or chased. So multiple harems, I'm sure, of zebra coming down in safety of numbers and having a good quench of the thirst. But looks like a nice cloudy day up there in Kenya, not quite as warm as it has been so far. Yes, Canine Girl, you were saying that there's so much uniqueness and beauty that if it existed elsewhere, it would be a crying shame. You're quite right, but it's we just don't know. We don't know. We're looking. James Webb is finding or searching for potential biosignatures on exoplanets. I mean, we stand to learn more in the next 10 years than we have done in the previous 10,000. I mean, it's a very, very exciting time in terms of what might be out there. But we must remember how special Earth is. I mean, don't forget, life may have been around for a while, but it took 2 billion years to evolve from single celled organisms to complex multicellular life. That's a very, very long time. Stable, not too many problems to allow that life to figure it all out, the chemistry, the climate, and everything else. But we don't know. Maybe we took a long time. Maybe life and other conditions evolve in a few hundreds of years. Who knows? Sci-fi movies might yet be right. I don't know if you've seen the movie Life. That was a kind of a fun and slightly traumatic at times. Finding life on Mars that evolved super quickly and terrible things happen. I won't give it away too much, but good entertainment for a couple of hours, even if a little far-fetched, perhaps. But listening to a podcast about astrobiology the other day, and we just don't know what's out there. We won't know until we look and we go and experience it. Yeah, sorry, it seems we had a bit of a break up there at El Doño, so we've zoomed all the way down to Medikwe and Tau. We've got a warthog trying his best to get that very, very short green grass growing close to the water here. And Jive Bunny, yes, I'm sorry we had to move away from the zebras paddling in the pool, but they certainly looked as if they were having some fun. Maybe there are whole alien races of warthogs, who knows? Super intelligent warthog. Anyways, pushing over the soil to get to the roots, the rhizomes, the structures under the ground that are holding all the nutrients. When you talk about evolution and natural selection, the warthogs have got those very sort of callousy areas on their knees, or would actually be their wrists. You can see him down on his haunches there. They're actually born with those now, such as their reliance upon them that even the day a warthog pops out of its mother, it already has calluses on its wrist because of so many generations of doing exactly what being there, moving around on the knees or the wrists, and that skin has toughened and has become a genetic trait being passed on through generations. Sally, I'm glad you adore warthogs. So do I. I always say that no offense intended to the warthogs, but they're so ugly. They've transcended ugliness and become actually really rather cute. I always enjoy watching warthogs. Ugly's a harsh word. Different, special. There's a very impressive male, this one. Huge tusks, great big warts, the two sets that you'd expect to see on a male. The female lack that second set much closer to the tusks as you can see them. Cat fan, you're right, and I agree with you. Our instruments are not necessarily adequate to see across these massive distances to see what else is happening out there. But we're getting better, and technology is improving. I think what we've achieved in the last 50 years, it still blows my mind to think that we only made the first aeroplanes in the late 1800s, early 1900s. I forget when the Wrights had their first flight, but it only took 60 or 70 years, basically one human lifetime, to go from creating an aeroplane to flying to the moon and back. I mean, it's amazing what we can achieve when we put our minds to it. The problem, of course, we have for a lot of things when we're sending probes to places to go and investigate them firsthand, like around Jupiter or Saturn. It takes years to develop that technology, and then it takes 8, 9 years, 7 or 8 years to fly from here to Jupiter. So by the time we arrive there, that technology is almost sort of 20 years out of date, as it were. So that's what they're trying to get across, this enormous problem of distance and time is one of the issues. But by having really sensitive telescopes in orbit around the world that can see light and, believe it or not, can look at a distant exoplanet hundreds of light years away and analyze the chemistry in its atmosphere, and look for biosignatures or byproducts of life, or if there is intelligent life, to look for signs of, say, pollution, or pick up radio waves that are being beamed out. um, the opportunities are there, but I agree it's going to take probably many more generations until we really have a better idea of whether we do share this universe with other forms of life. And of course, it may be in a different dimension. There may be life in other dimensions. I mean, who knows? There's so much to understand. Fifi Marie, he's uprooting the soil there. So you can see there's a very, very thin grassy layer. There's still at least some greenery because there's water in this area. But he's trying to sort of push over that top layer of soil because, like any plants, those grasses have got roots, and grasses store an awful lot of their nutrition under the ground so it doesn't get baked. It's also an adaptation of grass that it can be fed upon and not have all of its good parts destroyed. So it keeps a lot of the goodness sort of locked away under the ground. The warthogs have learnt this, and that great big sort of shovel-like nose, ooh, his nostrils are twitching, is designed for just pushing over that top layer of soil and getting to more nutritious parts. Which, according to Kimberly Enley, who agrees that rhizomes are delicious. I can't say I've eaten too many of them myself, but evidently this warthog is relishing them. Kimberly Enlow, you're also saying there's some pretty ugly things at the bottom of the ocean. Well, yeah, I agree. There is some weird and wonderful stuff in the deep ocean, and we know very little about the deep ocean, really. Space is a bit easier to get to because it's empty, but the amount of pressure, and the conditions at the bottom of the ocean make it very difficult for us to go and explore them. And life is so sporadic and spread out there that we are continuously finding new species on our own planet, let alone going out and finding the potential of species on other planets. We know very little about the ocean depths, and there are some incredibly unusual looking creatures down there. I mean, I'm sure most of you know of the Alien movies, the Alien and Aliens, and the whole franchise that developed from that. The inspiration for the xenomorph in Alien movies actually came from a deep sea creature, odd looking thing. But yeah, the anglerfish and those sort of eel like things, there's bioluminescence down there, there's all sorts of odd looking things hidden away, and many more things for us to find. Maybe megalodons down there somewhere, who knows? But yeah, beauty very much in the eye of the beholder. Nice little bit of grooming going on between some zebras. And an ostrich, a nice male ostrich. Always interesting things happening at Tau. Canine go well. Warthog tusks, yes, they are basically made out of ivory, but not the same as elephant ivory. Elephant ivory is fairly unique. The sort of hatching crisscross pattern in elephant ivory is unique to elephants and makes it very suitable for carving and the like, which is why it's been so used and elephants have been so persecuted. There is even a difference between, for example, mammoth ivory and elephant ivory from a microscopic scale, although the principle remains the same. But ultimately, as a sort of simple definition, yes, warthog tusk is also ivory, as are things like walrus tusk as well, but it's different from elephant ivory. And Sandra, you like ostriches? They are very unusual things, certainly. Amazing to see. We don't see them all that often in the Lowveld. A nice, somebody was saying there, a nice size, Catherine, a nice size comparison between the ostriches and the zebras. Ooh, a bit of a breeze blowing across Tau there. Look at that. A dust storm on Mars. Canine girl, well, zebras need to be very wary of ostriches, as do we all. They are potentially very dangerous animals. Their claws, the clawed little two toes that ostriches have got massive claws on, and well, to be quite frank about it, they're quite capable of disemboweling somebody, or a zebra for that matter. So they do command a little bit more respect than perhaps we might think of. They can be very, very dangerous animals. There's been many an accident had at the hands of an ostrich. Makes me also think of something like the cassowary down in Australia. That's also done some serious damage to people over the years. So don't underestimate an ostrich. Try not to get into an argument with one because it could end very, very badly for you. When you're saying you'll take a one-way ticket to Mars to avoid having to pay taxes. I'm sure that at some point there'll be a Mars tax. Don't worry. There was actually a very interesting thing I was sent recently. I do some work with a company out in the States, and they were doing a kids project, and they asked me to just fill in a questionnaire that a kid had sort of, I say a kid, a teenager had put together. And it was a really interesting concept, one that really got me thinking, which was about if we do populate other planets, what would be the visa situation? For example, if you lived on Mars and you had a child, and then if your child wanted to come back to Earth to visit, all work. And it actually really got me thinking. It's something I thought about. But if we are going to get to the stage of populating the cosmos, imagine the visa chaos that that's going to create. But it would require some element of control of everybody all deciding to go to the same moon of Neptune because there's really nice beaches there. You'd have to control numbers and control entry and exits, but that's something we'll have to worry about at a much later date, I would think. Lovely expansive landscape of Madikwe behind these zebras. Yeah, Catherine, as you said, ostriches can be scary, especially if they've got chicks. Always be careful of any animal with offspring. They will be far more, I won't say aggressive, but they are going to protect that biological investment with potentially their lives. So the males, when they're in sort of, I suppose we'll call it the ostrich equivalent to must, based on the conversations that we've been having. When a male is in reproductive status, his bill gets pinker, the skin on his legs goes bright pink. Again, just more testosterone, far more likely to be aggressive. I've actually been sort of half chased by an ostrich. It's quite scary. That thing's pretty big. And so you do not want to get in the way of a flailing leg of an ostrich because it will end very, very badly. I'm sure I read somewhere that they're considered to be like the 11th or the 12th most dangerous animal in Africa or capable of inflicting some serious damage. But they're also highly comical to watch and amazing when they're all running together across the landscape. Granny Mango, do I think the dirty zebras feel embarrassed? No, I don't. I think they're very comfortable in their skin. They're just trying to be different and unique. I don't think they would be embarrassed, but I don't know. We'll have to see if they're being laughed at by the other zebras. If they go for a swim, then perhaps so. They should be ashamed of themselves for having a roll around in the mud or in the dust. It's an interesting idea, this whole idea of embarrassment, though. We don't really see animals being embarrassed. That being said, if you see a like something that's a bit more emotive, like an elephant, if you do see one trip over, you can almost sort of see him looking around afterwards, going, "No, I meant to do that. That was all planned. Don't worry. Now I'm going to sheepishly hide away a little bit." I wonder if animals do feel embarrassed. I see my little visa on other planets thing has prompted a few responses. It's actually a really interesting thing to think about. I sort of laughed when I read it, but actually I had to fill out a little questionnaire of how I felt about certain things. And the more I thought about it, the more I thought this is actually a very real thing that might they be there, and it's going to be incredibly complicated. But I see a few people, Penelope Kenyon, thinking we'll all be microchipped. Yeah, you're probably right. And peace all barcode tattoos on our necks. Well, that sounds rather sort of prison based, but who knows? Maybe, or maybe we'll be scanning eyes like in the movies. Penelope Kenyon, P Sol suggesting wrist chips. Well, we do it to animals and dogs and cats. So it probably is a natural evolution of what's going to happen to us. But yeah, just right, it would make immigration on Earth a moot point. But let's be honest, we struggle with that. As somebody who's had recent sagas with visas and things, I think we need to put our own affairs in order before we start worrying about cross solar system and stellar visas, certainly. I think we had a few comments coming about. Thanks for all of your questions and comments and things today, everybody. It's made for some interesting discussions. Jive Bunny, you've never eaten an ostrich egg. Neither have I. And Lady Macbeth saying you'd have a job to eat a whole one. Yeah, absolutely. I forget, is it 20, the equivalent of 22 chicken eggs in terms of the volume of an ostrich egg? As just Kendra says, that would make a very large quiche indeed. Mercedes Ben, it's all making you hungry, or maybe a time for eggs on toast for breakfast today. But a great food source for many other animals. Jackals, big fans of ostrich eggs, certainly. And the Pleiades star cluster was seen by the Bushmen as a little nest of ostrich eggs up in the sky as well. And amazingly strong. Not that I recommend it. Please don't do it. But they do say that if the ostrich egg is sort of, its long axis pointing upwards, you can actually stand on an ostrich egg. It's so solid and so strong that it probably wouldn't break. But please don't try that if you ever do find ostrich eggs. That would be not very nice if it didn't work out well. But amazing things, ostrich eggs. Jive Buddy, yes, dogs do look embarrassed sometimes. I was thinking sort of African animals, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, dogs do look somewhat embarrassed when they do something silly. And Cat fan, you're saying animals unlikely to have self-conscious emotions, with maybe the exception of dolphins. Well, say we don't know. I would sort of agree with you. I think the more sentient that animal is, the better appreciation of behavior and worrying about, I suppose, if you sort of think about what embarrassment is, it's worrying about what people think of you or how you look to other members of your species. And I think, yes, you have to have a fairly good appreciation of self and sentience in order for that to be a problem. And we tend to associate that with the more intelligent animals, the primates, the elephants, the dolphins, certainly. So whether or not, I don't want to say more primitive animals, the animals that don't necessarily have such well-developed brains in terms of sociality, would experience that. But again, we'll never know until we can speak zebra and ask them. We will just have to wonder. Marilla Shortcake saying an ostrich egg would make a crazy weapon. I just had visions of sort of medieval times of people launching catapults of massive ostrich eggs, smashing into battalions and covering everybody in egg white and egg yolk. A funny concept. Some very relaxed looking wildebeest. It looks like that one whose head's just popping into the left-hand side of the screen is flat on his side and using his horn as a bit of a pillow. Why not? Yeah, that's a very relaxed wildebeest, not too concerned about what's going on in his surroundings at all, safe in the knowledge there's plenty of other eyes and ears out there, and yeah, nice open area with good visibility. Look forward to switch off a little bit. Well said, canine girl. Yeah, in human life, too much judgment and opinion on what is right and wrong and what is beautiful or not beautiful. And we should all take a leaf out of nature's book and just accept the beauty of wildlife for what it is and not worry about other people's opinions. I think that's a very nice way of putting it, certainly. Everything is beautiful in its own right, from these wildebeest to the zebras to the trees to the little bugs, the spiders, doesn't really matter, all fulfilling their own roles, doing their own thing, living their own lives, and quite happy doing so. We do have a tendency to make things complicated. And it has been a very philosophical Sunday live at the Waterhole Canine Girl. I keep forgetting it's Sunday. We're supposed to be having a relaxing day. But yeah, we've got into some fairly deep concepts today, but that's all part of the fun, I suppose. Let the brain just run. You never know quite what I'm going to end up chatting about. And so thanks for everybody's sharing their opinions on it. It makes for an interesting couple of hours and hopefully giving us all something to think about. But these wildebeest have had a much better idea, I think, for a pleasant late Sunday afternoon. So particularly the one on the left. I'm a big fan of this on the left. Very, very relaxed. Blue wildebeest. Well, Marilla Shortcake, I'm glad that you found today's discussion mind stimulating. Well, that's kind of the whole point, I think, isn't it? There's all sorts of things to be considered, and it's always good to come at things from different angles and different perspectives. There's so much an infinite world of opportunity, opinion, and ideas out there. It's good to explore some of them sometime, to which we have no answer to most of it, but that's kind of the fun part. So the brain is a muscle just like anything else, and we use it. And we don't use it as much these days. We Google things we don't know the answer to, and we believe what we read, even if the sources are not necessarily reliable. And it's very good to go out there and just give everything some thought from your own perspective, and see it from different perspectives. It's good growth potential. It's nice to see that classic top to tail pose that those two zebras have adopted there, each one benefiting from that fly swat. They deal with the bot flies and all the other little insects that, especially this time of year, will be buzzing around the eyes to try and get to moisture. There you go. Yeah, that's a good point. It's interesting to see how tolerant of each other all the herbivores are. We've got wildebeest and zebras standing right next to each other. You never really see any great amounts of competition between them, but put two predators in the same situation, and things will be a little bit different. Predators will, generally speak, take the opportunity to kill other predators. But remember, they are all fighting for a very limited and nutrition-rich resource. There's an awful lot more grass and leaves to go around than there are animals for predators to feed on. So it's all to do with resource availability and ensuring that you have the best opportunities. You certainly see animals fighting amongst themselves to control territories and have breeding rights. And I'm sure it will be interesting if animals sort of regularly crossbred out in the wild. We'd have a few more disputes. But I think, yeah, the pressure of predation and the benefits of many eyes and many ears and having the ability to protect oneself in a group trumps the fact that there would be any what we would call interspecific competition between species. Thankfully, the resources that these two species particularly are after are fairly plentiful. And of course, they utilize different parts of it and potentially help one another, what we call facultative grazing. So zebras generally will take more fibrous, low quality material, the flowering parts of the grass, the top parts of the grass, whereas the wildebeest prefer the much lower parts, the more succulent parts of the grass, different digestive systems, different requirements. So the zebras almost prep the grass to the point whereby the wildebeest can then benefit from them. Everybody working together. Hello, ostrich. I'm doing a little, I was going to say flyby, but we probably shouldn't say that for ostriches, a little walk by. I think we'll zoom back across to the eastern side of the country to Buchanan's Naledi Dam, and I think we might have an elephant there. Yes, we do. Not as many elephants today as we normally get, but nice to see this one young bull here having a bit of a mud bath. Kimberley Enlow, no, botflies are a reasonable size. You'd certainly see them. They're not microscopic flies at all. They're the ones that are actually trying to lay their eggs. They actually lay already formed larvae, usually around the eyes of animals, and then they sort of get in. I don't know if it's through the tear ducts or they burrow their way in, and they end up sort of in the respiratory system, and they attach to parts of the body. They feed through the soft tissue in there or the oxygenated tissue, and they make their way all the way down to the nasal cavity as they're adults, and then they get sort of snorted out by the animals there. So no, botflies are a little bit larger. I couldn't give you the exact size, but I think you certainly see them. There are much smaller things that will buzz around your face. The one that sort of annoy us are the little mapani flies, although they're actually stingless bees. But there are, of course, tiny little flies. So many microscopic insects out there that we are just not really aware of. But it seems it was a fleeting visit, Eddie. As we decided not to hang around. Let's go back down to town and see what else we can find around the water there. Surprised we haven't seen elephants here at Tower. There's normally always elephants around. These little pods of wildebeest scattered around, little family groups, no doubt with one dominant male and some females. They've all sort of got their own individual personal space today. Yeah, at least four little groups of wildebeest. There's our little ostrich in the background. I think we're going to try our luck at Ukakuya over in Namibia. What's happening there? Time to enjoy some of these wide open, expansive views of Ukukoyu over in Namibia. Looks like we've got a Gemsbok having a bit of a paddle and a drink. Not quite sure what those are at the back, but always plenty of antelope coming to make use of this in a particularly dry and arid area. So we have had huge herds of these here, 50, 60 strong, coming down to drink before. But yeah, I'm not sure where all the Ellies are today. Must be some meeting somewhere. Yeah, of course, tomorrow is World Elephant Day. So yeah, maybe there's a big meeting to discuss what they're going to get up to tomorrow. Big conferences, maybe they're all traveling, packing their. I have to throw in the terrible, terrible elephant dad joke. So yeah, maybe they're all saving themselves for a wonderful food for us tomorrow. And I will have that honor to share it with you as well. I've got my last day on live at the waterhole for the time being. Got more sort of next week, but tomorrow will be my last day of this current little stretch. How lucky am I? I've had World Lion Day and World Elephant Day. Amazing to think so much life can still exist in such a barren landscape such as this out in Namibia. So I've been lucky enough to spend various over in Namibia in different Tomorrowland and down in Sossusvlei, and you take a look around you at the sheer desolate landscape. It's just rocks and sand and hardly any uh, big trees, just a few bushes scattered around. But there's always life, especially adapted life, so incredibly adaptable. We forget sometimes, and so discovering new things, those tardigrades or water bears, as they're otherwise known as, which we only discovered a couple of decades ago. The ridiculous extreme conditions that they can survive, high doses of radiation, complete desiccation, an utter lack of oxygen, minus, I forget what it is, minus 200 and something degrees they can survive in, more than 100 degrees Celsius, and they just sort of shut themselves down and then can reanimate themselves. We often don't give life enough credit for what it's capable of and how adaptable it is. Certainly opens up possibilities, say, for, let's just say, other environments to harbour life. Yeah, nice to see a little bit of activity in, but we're going to shoot all the way back up to Kenya and Oldonyo Lodge. Ah, there we go. Typical scene at Oldonyo with a big elephant bull. Slight signs of some mild muck and those stains on the temporal glands, but I don't see the back legs stained with all the dripping of urine, so maybe just or just coming out of bust. May also just be an emotional response as well. It could just be a little bit of residual wetness from a mud splatter, who knows? Hello, you're beautifully coloured, accurate and fur, with a little and large situation going on there. Always for the impalas, it's always the elephants and the lions that get all the attention, but we just must remember that it's such a beautiful antelope, impala, and I have to sort of make myself appreciate it as we see them so often. We tend to, I don't say dismiss them, but take them for granted. Really just sit and look at an impala, the way it's put together, the delicacy of it all. It really is one of the most beautiful creatures here in terms of aesthetics, particularly a nice big ram like that, but beautiful mark on the fur, particularly on the face. They've got these lovely doughy eyes. Yeah, often not given as much credit as I think they should deserve, the impalas. Beautiful boy, this and what a lovely, serene shot that is. Very much the centre of attention. Dramatic eyes, classic African landscape, and the largest terrestrial animal of them all. Spectacular. They're very much just having a bit of a rest. Legs locked, very soft, sleepy-looking eyes, trunk resting on the ground. His back legs a bit of shifted waist onto one side, and they will do the same on the other. Very much having almost a doze, just a little bit of activity there, but very much taking the opportunity. There's some nice comments coming in about the level of thought-provoking discussion we've had today. Well, I'm glad you've all enjoyed it. It might be a bit for a Sunday, but hopefully, yeah, it's given you all something to think about, and all of you guys for sending in your thoughts and your comments. It's such a wonderful forum to put ideas around and consider other options. So we are almost out of time now, unfortunately. Only got 2 minutes to go. We've got a good way to finish with this beautiful boy here, old Donio. And of course, don't forget that he wasn't here. On Safari will start pretty much as soon as this is finished, and then we'll do sunset safaris to look forward to from our various locations. So I hope you'll stay tuned in. And know that there'll be some other interesting points of view and perspectives shared on a whole variety of things from this world or possibly others. And then Live at the Waterhole doesn't stop. As you said, tomorrow I will be back and we will see what else we can come up with and what we can see and what we can discuss. So then we'll start at 1 o'clock Central African time for a couple of hours. So I hope you can join us for that and bring all your questions and comments. So I'm sure we'll have some in-depth discussion on elephants. Day. This guy's a little bit of a guzzle of the water. Indeed, a very mind-stimulating and philosophical Sunday afternoon that it has been. We're pretty much out of time, so again, huge thanks to everybody for joining in the conversation. I hope you've enjoyed it. We've seen some beautiful things, as always. Yeah, don't forget to stay tuned for the rest of the day. I will catch up with you tomorrow. And for now, I leave you with these beautiful views of magnificent waterfalls. Enjoying the gym. Old Donald.
Afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Amy and this is the show where we look at the highlights from the last 24 hours. This is On Safari.